The sun rose gently over the quiet town, painting the sky with shades of gold and pink. It was a peaceful morning, the kind that made everything feel safe and calm. Inside a small house at the end of the street, a man named Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in his hand. His eyes were sharp and watchful, yet filled with kindness whenever they rested on his daughter, Amara. Marcus was not an ordinary man. Once, he had lived a life full of danger and discipline as a Navy SEAL. He had served in places far away, in storms of fire and fear, but those days were behind him now. He had chosen peace, leaving behind the uniform and weapons to focus on the one thing that truly mattered to him: his daughter. Amara was only 10 years old, but she had the spirit of someone much older. She was bright, cheerful, and full of questions about the world. Her laughter filled the house like music, chasing away the shadows of Marcus's past. Every day with her felt like a blessing, a second chance at life. "Daddy," Amara said as she picked at her breakfast, "can you come to my school play next week? I'm playing the lead part." Marcus smiled warmly, his heart softening at her words. "Of course, little star. I wouldn't miss it for anything." Amara's eyes lit up, and she clapped her hands with joy. Moments like this were why Marcus had walked away from the battlefield. He had promised himself long ago that no matter what, he would always be there for her. After breakfast, Marcus helped Amara pack her school bag. He tied her shoelaces the way she liked, double knots, so they would never come loose. He walked her to the front door, his protective instincts always present. Though he trusted the safety of their neighborhood, the habits of his past never truly left him. His eyes scanned the street out of routine, making sure everything was as it should be. On the way to school, Amara skipped along the sidewalk, humming a tune she had learned in class. Marcus carried her bag, pretending it was heavy just to make her laugh. "This bag is so full, are you hiding bricks in here?" he joked. "No, Daddy," she giggled, covering her mouth. "It's just books." Her innocence was pure, untouched by the dangers Marcus knew existed beyond the horizon. Yet he kept his smile strong, never letting her see the weight of the world he carried inside. At the school gate, Marcus knelt down and hugged Amara tightly. "Be good, listen to your teacher, and remember you'll be right here when school is over," she finished for him, grinning. "That's right," Marcus said softly. He kissed her forehead and watched as she ran inside, her backpack bouncing with every step. His heart swelled with pride. The rest of Marcus's day was simple. He went back home, did some repair work around the house, and later jogged through the park to keep himself fit. His mind often wandered back to Amara, remembering her smile at breakfast. To Marcus, she was more than a daughter, she was his anchor, the reason he stood tall after so many years of hardship. As the afternoon sun began to dip, Marcus returned to the school, leaning casually against the gate where he always waited for her. Children poured out one by one, their voices filling the air with excitement. He spotted Amara among them, waving happily as she ran toward him. "Daddy," she shouted. He caught her in his arms, spinning her around until she laughed uncontrollably. "How was school today?" he asked. "Great. I learned a new song, and I got full marks on my spelling test," she said proudly. "That's my girl," Marcus replied, his voice full of pride. The walk home was filled with chatter. Amara told him stories about her classmates, her teacher, and the funny things that happened during recess. Marcus listened carefully, nodding at every detail, because to him, every word she spoke was precious. Back at home, they cooked dinner together, Amara cutting vegetables with a plastic knife while Marcus stirred the pot. They sat at the table and prayed quietly before eating, a habit they never missed. The evening was filled with warmth, the kind of peace Marcus had fought so hard to build. After dinner, Amara curled up beside her father on the couch as he read her favorite storybook. Her eyes slowly closed, her breathing steady, and soon she was asleep with her head resting on his shoulder. Marcus looked down at her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. In that moment, he whispered to himself, "As long as I'm alive, nothing will ever harm you." The night outside was calm, the stars shining gently over the quiet town. For Marcus and Amara, it seemed like just another ordinary day. They didn't know that their world was about to change, that shadows were drawing closer, and that soon, peace would be broken. But for now, in that small house filled with love, a father held his daughter close, unaware of the storm waiting beyond the horizon. The morning after their peaceful evening, the air felt calm and fresh. Birds chirped outside, and the sky glowed with a soft blue. Marcus stood at the kitchen counter, preparing a small lunch for Amara while she brushed her hair in the next room. "Don't forget your jacket," Marcus called. "It might get chilly later." "I got it, Daddy," Amara answered with a smile. She came into the kitchen, her backpack hanging loosely on her shoulder, her eyes bright with excitement. Today, her class was going on a small trip to the local museum, and she had been talking about it all week. Marcus placed the lunchbox inside her bag, then knelt to look into her eyes. "Stay with your teacher, don't wander off, and remember you're my little star, always careful." Amara nodded and hugged him tightly. "I will, Daddy." The school bus arrived, and Marcus stood by the gate as Amara climbed aboard, waving from the window. He waved back, watching the bus disappear down the street. His heart always felt lighter and heavier at the same time when she left his sight. The day passed slowly for Marcus. He cleaned the house, worked on the garden, and kept himself busy. But he often glanced at the clock, waiting for the moment when Amara would come home with stories about her trip. By late afternoon, Marcus returned to the school gate, standing in his usual spot. Parents gathered around, chatting and waiting for their children. Soon, children spilled out from the buses and classrooms, their voices filling the air. Marcus's eyes scanned the crowd automatically. He saw children hugging their parents, laughing, and running toward cars. But he didn't see Amara. His chest tightened. He waited another minute, then another. Still no sign of her. His eyes moved quickly across the group of students, searching for her familiar face. She was not there. Marcus approached the teacher, a gentle woman who knew Amara well. "Excuse me, where is my daughter?" "Amara. She was supposed to be on the trip today." The teacher's smile faded. She looked around nervously. "She was with us at the museum, she boarded the bus with the group, she should be here." Marcus's pulse quickened. He could feel the old instincts stirring inside him, the sharp awareness that once kept him alive in dangerous places. His eyes scanned the parking lot, noticing every small detail: the strange van parked near the corner, the way the driver avoided eye contact, the hurried movement of people leaving too quickly. "Are you sure she was on the bus back?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "Yes," the teacher whispered, worry spreading across her face. "I saw her get in. But when I checked the seats again at the school, she wasn't there." Marcus's world seemed to stop. The air around him felt heavy, and every sound grew distant. Amara, his little star, his reason for living, was missing. For a moment, panic pressed against his chest, but years of training held him steady. He forced himself to breathe, to think clearly. He could not allow fear to control him. Fear was the enemy of focus. He moved quickly, checking the nearby area. He asked other children if they had seen Amara. Some shook their heads, others said they remembered her sitting near the back of the bus. But no one had seen her step off. The van in the corner caught his eye again. The engine was running, though no one seemed to be inside. He walked closer, but by the time he reached it, the van pulled away, disappearing down the road. His instincts screamed. Something was wrong. Marcus clenched his fists, a storm rising inside him. The quiet life he had built was breaking apart before his eyes. But he did not let the anger show. Instead, he turned back to the teacher, his voice steady but edged with steel. "Call the police. Report her missing. Tell them everything. And don't waste a second." The teacher nodded, fumbling with her phone. Marcus, however, did not wait. He stepped away from the crowd, his mind already racing. He thought about the van, the timing, the way it left just as he started looking. He remembered faces around the museum men he had noticed earlier, standing too far from the children, pretending to be visitors but watching too closely. His heart ached as he imagined Amara's fear, her small hands clutching at nothing, her eyes searching for him. But he pushed the pain deep down. He knew he could not think as only a father now. He had to think as he once did as a Navy SEAL. Every skill, every lesson, every instinct that had been drilled into him for years returned to the surface. The man who had lived quietly as a father was gone. In his place rose the protector, the fighter, the shadow that once moved unseen in the night. Marcus looked down the road where the van had disappeared. His jaw tightened. Whoever had taken his daughter had made a mistake. They did not know who he was, or what he was capable of. The evening sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the street. Parents held their children close, fear already spreading. But Marcus stood apart, his eyes sharp and unblinking. He whispered under his breath, a promise only the wind could hear. "Amara, I'm coming for you." The quiet life was over. The storm had begun. The night settled heavy over the town, yet Marcus did not rest. His home, once filled with warmth and laughter, now felt empty without Amara's voice. Every corner of the house reminded him of her shoes by the door, her drawings on the fridge, her blanket folded neatly on the couch. The silence was unbearable. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, his hands clasped tightly together. He had called the police, reported everything he knew, and given descriptions of the van. They promised to investigate, to send out alerts, to do their best. But Marcus had lived long enough to know that their best might not be enough. For him, failure was not an option. His heart ached as he pictured Amara, scared and alone, calling out for him. The thought was like fire in his chest, burning away all doubt. He would not sit and wait. He could not. His daughter needed him now, not tomorrow, not next week. Slowly, Marcus walked into his bedroom. At the back of his closet, hidden behind old clothes, was a heavy trunk. He pulled it out, the metal scraping softly against the floor. For years, he had kept it locked, telling himself that part of his life was over. But tonight, the past had awakened. He opened the trunk, and inside lay the reminders of who he once was. His Navy SEAL gear, carefully stored. Maps, notebooks, and a few personal items from missions long ago. Marcus picked up his old watch, the one he wore through countless operations. The leather was worn, but it still worked perfectly. He strapped it onto his wrist, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto him again. Next, he pulled out a notebook where he had written tactical notes, habits of criminals, ways to track movement, methods to stay unseen. As his fingers turned the pages, his mind shifted. The father in him remained strong, but the warrior in him rose higher. His eyes, once filled with sorrow, now sharpened with focus. Marcus knew that whoever had taken Amara had planned it carefully. They had watched her, chosen the right moment, and used the van as cover. This was not random. Someone wanted her, and that thought chilled him. But he also knew one thing: people who planned mistakes often forgot the smallest details. And Marcus had been trained his whole life to find those details. He spread a large map of the town across the table. His finger traced the route the van had taken when it left the school. That road led to two possible areas: an industrial district on the east side, and an abandoned farmland toward the west. Both were places where someone could hide without being noticed. Marcus leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. He remembered the men he had seen near the museum, pretending to be visitors. One had a limp. Another kept adjusting a cap that barely hid his eyes. Small details, but in his line of work, nothing was too small. He wrote them down in the notebook, building a picture piece by piece. For hours, Marcus studied, thought, and planned. His body felt tired, but his mind was alive, sharper than it had been in years. It was as if his training had been waiting, sleeping inside him, ready to awaken when needed. At one point, he stood by the window, looking out at the dark street. His reflection stared back, strong shoulders, steady eyes, and a man who would stop at nothing. He whispered quietly, "They don't know me. They don't know what I can do." The memories of his Navy SEAL days returned like waves. Missions where he had to move unseen in enemy territory. Nights where silence meant survival. Times when his decisions saved lives or cost them. Those memories were heavy, but now they gave him strength. Before dawn, Marcus packed a small bag with what he needed: flashlight, notebook, gloves, water, and a few tools from his trunk. He dressed in simple dark clothes, ones that would not draw attention. He was not preparing for war, but he was preparing for a hunt. He left a note on the table, just in case someone came looking. It read only 4 words: "Finding Amara. Don't wait." When the first light of morning touched the horizon, Marcus stepped outside. The world around him was quiet, unaware of the storm building inside him. He locked the door, looked once at the empty window where Amara usually waved goodbye, and turned away with firm steps. His plan was clear. He would search the east side first. The industrial district had old warehouses, places where no one paid attention to shadows. It was the kind of place men like the ones he saw at the museum would choose. As he walked, his mind stayed focused. Every sound, every movement, every detail around him became important. The old instincts guided him: move carefully, trust your senses, never ignore what feels wrong. Inside, Marcus carried both fear and determination. Fear for his daughter, determination to bring her back. He knew the road ahead would test him, but he also knew he had faced worse. The difference now was that this mission was not for a flag or a country. This mission was for love, for family, for the little girl who called him daddy. And so, as the sun rose higher, Marcus moved toward the unknown. His past had awakened, his skills had returned, and his heart burned with a single promise. He would find Amara. No matter the cost. The city was waking up, but Marcus was already on the move. His steps were steady, his eyes sharp, and his heart fixed on only one thought: Amara. Every breath he took was fueled by the memory of her laughter, her small arms hugging him, and the promise he had made to always protect her. He started his search at the industrial district, a place that once held life but now stood silent. Empty warehouses, broken fences, and cracked roads spread across the area. Few people came here anymore, which made it the perfect place for anyone trying to hide. Marcus walked carefully, observing every sign around him. He checked the ground for tire tracks, noticing fresh marks near one of the side roads. Kneeling down, he touched the soil. The tracks were recent, probably from a van, and they led deeper into the district. He followed them slowly, his senses awake to every sound: the distant bark of a dog, the hum of a broken streetlight, the faint rattle of metal in the wind. These details guided him like whispers, telling him where to look. The trail led him to an old warehouse. Its walls were faded, its windows cracked, but something about it felt alive. He noticed a faint shoe print near the door, small enough to belong to a child. His chest tightened. Amara had been here. Marcus leaned against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. He imagined her calling for him, scared but strong, and that image gave him power. He checked the lock on the door. It was recently broken, not old like the rest of the building. Someone had forced their way inside. He didn't rush. He circled the building, scanning for other exits. The back door showed the same signs: fresh scratches, recent use. From one of the windows, he spotted a small piece of cloth stuck in the frame. It was pink, the same color as Amara's jacket. Marcus's hand trembled as he picked it up, but his eyes grew even sharper. "She's alive," he whispered. "She's leaving signs." For a moment, his heart filled with pride. Amara was clever, just like he had taught her. She must have torn the fabric on purpose, knowing he would find it. That thought alone gave him more strength than any weapon could. Marcus stepped back and studied the area. The warehouse had no lights on, no movement. Either the kidnappers had already moved her, or they were hiding inside, waiting. He could not take risks without knowing. He decided to check nearby. Down the street, he found a small shop still open. The owner, an older man with tired eyes, looked up as Marcus entered. "You're here early," the man said. Marcus placed the pink cloth on the counter. "Have you seen a van pass through here?" "White, maybe with tinted windows." The shopkeeper frowned, thinking. "Yes. Last night, I saw one. Parked near that old warehouse. The men who came out didn't look like workers. They bought water and bread, paid in cash, and left quickly. I thought it was strange." Marcus nodded. That was enough. They had been inside. He thanked the shopkeeper and stepped back into the cold morning air. He followed the roads leading away from the warehouse, checking every corner for clues. His mind worked like a puzzle, connecting each detail. The van's direction, the supplies they bought, the way they left quickly, it all suggested they were moving often, never staying too long. He remembered the farmland to the west, the wide empty fields and abandoned barns. It was isolated, easy to hide in, and far from watchful eyes. His instincts told him that was the next place to look. As Marcus walked toward the bus station, he noticed something unusual. A man leaning against a wall, pretending to read a newspaper. His posture was stiff, his eyes flickered toward Marcus too often. Marcus had seen that look before in men who were on watch. Without breaking stride, Marcus walked past, pretending not to notice. But inside, he was alert. If these men were keeping watch, it meant Amara's kidnappers knew someone might come after them. He turned a corner, quickened his pace, then slipped quietly into a side alley. From there, he circled back, moving silently like he had done many times during his SEAL days. Within minutes, he was behind the man with the newspaper. Up close, Marcus noticed the small earpiece in the man's ear. Definitely not an ordinary bystander. He was part of something bigger. Marcus's jaw tightened. Whoever these people were, they were organized. Marcus didn't reveal himself. Instead, he memorized the man's face, his clothing, and the direction his eyes kept scanning. Information was power, and Marcus needed every piece of it. He moved away quietly, unseen, and continued toward the farmland. His steps were heavy but sure, guided by love and determination. The farmland stretched wide, silent under the rising sun. Old barns stood like forgotten giants, and tall grass whispered in the wind. Marcus crouched low, scanning the area with careful eyes. In the distance, he noticed faint smoke rising from one of the barns. Someone was there. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed calm. This could be it. Amara could be inside. Marcus whispered to himself, steady and firm, "Hold on, little star. I'm close." The hunt had truly begun, and Marcus was ready for whatever came next. The sun dipped lower, and shadows stretched across the farmland as Marcus crouched near the old barn. His eyes never left the faint smoke curling into the sky. It was small, like someone had lit a fire inside for warmth or to cook food. That single detail confirmed his suspicion someone was there, and they weren't just passing by. The barn stood in silence, but Marcus knew silence could be deceiving. He had walked into places that seemed empty before, only to find danger waiting in the dark. He crouched lower, studying everything: the footprints near the grass, the marks of tires, the faint sound of movement when the wind paused. His chest tightened as he thought of Amara. If she was inside, she would be frightened. But Marcus reminded himself that she was strong. She had always listened to him, always remembered the small lessons he taught her about being careful and staying calm. She would hold on. He had to believe that. Marcus circled the barn quietly, moving like a shadow. At the back, he noticed a window with broken glass. The frame looked old, but there were fresh marks around it, as if someone had recently climbed through. Peering inside, Marcus saw dim light flickering and heard muffled voices. He froze, listening carefully. One voice was rough, impatient. "We should move soon. Staying in one place too long is risky." Another voice answered, calm but commanding. "We wait. The man doesn't know who we are. He won't find us here." Marcus's jaw tightened. They were wrong. He had found them. But it wasn't only their words that caught his attention. Behind their voices, he heard something else. A faint sound. A small cough. His heart almost stopped. It was Amara. She was alive. Marcus pressed his forehead against the wooden wall, closing his eyes for a moment. Relief washed over him, but it quickly turned into determination. He could not rush in without a plan. One mistake could put her in more danger. He crouched back, pulling out his small notebook from his bag. He quickly sketched the barn's layout from what he had observed: the entrances, the window, and the likely positions of the men inside. His training guided him, but his heart fueled him. From the voices, Marcus guessed there were at least 3 men. They sounded tired but alert. Whoever they were, they thought they were safe. That overconfidence would be their weakness. Marcus decided not to move in that night. Instead, he waited nearby, hidden in the tall grass, watching every detail. He studied their routines, the way one man left occasionally to fetch supplies from a small car parked nearby. He noticed the leader stayed close to the barn, always keeping an eye inside, as if guarding something important. Through the cracks in the barn wall, Marcus caught glimpses of Amara. She sat on a chair, her hands tied but her spirit unbroken. Even in fear, she held herself bravely. Marcus's eyes grew wet as he watched her. He wanted to run in, to lift her into his arms right then. But he forced himself to wait. The night grew darker, and the kidnappers grew careless. One dozed off near the door, another muttered complaints as he paced back and forth. Marcus could almost hear the frustration in their voices. The leader finally spoke again, his tone sharper. "We only need to hold her until the pickup. After that, it's out of our hands." Marcus's heart froze. Pickup. That meant there was someone else behind this, someone giving orders. These men were only part of a bigger plan. The thought sent a chill through him. Why Amara? What did they want from a little girl? Marcus forced the questions aside. He would uncover the truth soon, but first, he had to get her out. At dawn, he moved back to his safe distance, hidden behind a fallen tree. He wrote down everything he had learned: their numbers, their habits, and the time they mentioned pickup. He studied his notes carefully, building a plan in his mind. The sun rose, painting the fields in gold, but Marcus felt only the weight of what was to come. His past as a Navy SEAL had prepared him for this. He had faced danger, fear, and impossible odds before. But this was different. This was his daughter. He clenched his fists, whispering to himself, "You chose the wrong child. You chose the wrong father." His face was calm, but his eyes burned with fire. The barn loomed in the distance, quiet once again, but Marcus knew the storm was close. He was ready to face the darkness, ready to uncover the truth, and ready to fight for the one person who gave his life meaning. The hunt was no longer just about finding Amara. It was about facing the people who thought they could take her from him. And Marcus would show them who he really was. The father. The protector. The Navy SEAL. The morning air was cool, the kind of quiet that made every sound sharp and clear. Marcus crouched low in the tall grass, his eyes fixed on the barn where Amara was held. He had spent the night studying the kidnappers, learning their movements, their patterns, their weaknesses. Now the time had come. His heart beat fast, not from fear, but from love. Every thought carried Amara's face, her smile, her laughter, the way she always said, "Daddy will always find me." He whispered to himself, "I'm here, little star. I'm coming." Inside the barn, the men were restless. Marcus could hear them through the cracks in the wooden walls. One of them muttered about being tired, another complained about waiting too long. Their leader's voice cut through the air, steady but impatient. "The pickup will come tonight. Until then, keep watch." Marcus knew he couldn't wait until night. If Amara was moved again, she might disappear into the hands of people far more dangerous. This was the moment. He studied the barn one last time. One man guarded the front door, slouched on a chair, half asleep. Another paced inside near the back, his footsteps heavy. The leader stayed close to Amara, who sat quietly, her hands still bound, her eyes filled with both fear and courage. Marcus breathed deeply, steadying himself. His training taught him patience, but his heart told him to act. He blended the two, calm and swift. He moved first to the side window, slipping silently closer. The broken glass had left an opening just wide enough. He peeked through, his eyes locking on Amara. For a moment, everything else disappeared. She was there. Alive. His chest tightened as he saw her lips move. She was whispering softly, maybe praying, maybe calling for him. Marcus pressed his palm gently against the wall, as if to tell her, "I'm here." Then he acted. With careful steps, he circled to the back door. His hands moved quickly, testing the lock. It was old, rusty, and weak. A gentle push and it gave way, opening just enough for him to slip inside. The barn smelled of dust and smoke. Shafts of light broke through cracks in the wood, casting thin lines across the floor. Marcus stayed low, his footsteps silent, his breathing controlled. The pacing man was the first obstacle. Marcus timed his movements, waiting for the man to turn. With quiet steps, he moved closer, then grabbed a loose wooden board from the floor. In one swift motion, he tapped it against a beam, making a faint noise on the other side of the barn. The man stopped, confused, and walked toward the sound. That gave Marcus the space he needed. He slipped behind the shadows, inching closer to Amara. Her eyes widened when she saw him. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't cry out. She remembered his words, "Stay strong, stay quiet, and I'll find you." Marcus knelt beside her, his fingers quickly untying the ropes. He whispered softly, "Daddy's here. You're safe now." Amara nodded, holding back sobs as the ropes fell from her wrists. She clutched his arm tightly, her small hand trembling. But their moment was brief. The leader turned suddenly, his sharp eyes noticing the movement. "Hey," he shouted. The guard at the door jolted awake, and the pacing man spun back toward them. The barn, once quiet, burst with noise. Marcus pulled Amara behind him, his body shielding hers. His voice was calm but firm. "Stay low. Don't move until I tell you." The men rushed forward, their surprise turning into anger. Marcus moved with precision, every step guided by years of training. He dodged the first man's grab, pushing him hard against a beam, knocking the breath from his chest. The second man lunged, but Marcus sidestepped, using his own strength against him, sending him stumbling to the ground. The leader, however, stayed firm. His eyes were cold, his voice sharp. You don't know who you're dealing with. Marcus's gaze was unshaken. You don't know who she belongs to. The barn echoed with tension as the men tried again, but Marcus stood like a wall. He didn't fight with rage, he fought with purpose. Every move was to protect Amara, every step to keep her safe. His body moved like the soldier he once was, swift and controlled, leaving no space for mistakes. Amara crawled to the side, keeping low, just as her father told her. Her heart pounded, but she never took her eyes off him. She had always seen him as her hero, but now she saw the strength that came from something deeper: his love for her. The struggle grew intense. The barn filled with noise, shouts, footsteps, the crash of wood. But Marcus never faltered. With each moment, he pushed the men back, forcing them to realize the truth: they were not in control. Finally, as the dust settled, the two guards lay groaning on the ground, unable to stand. The leader backed away slowly, his confidence fading. His eyes darted toward the door, knowing the fight was lost. Marcus stepped forward, his voice calm but unyielding. This ends now. The leader hesitated, then turned and ran out of the barn, disappearing into the fields. Marcus did not chase him, not yet. His first duty was to Amara. He rushed to her side, kneeling down and pulling her into his arms. She buried her face into his chest, her tears finally spilling. Daddy! I knew you'd come. Marcus held her tightly, his eyes closing as relief washed over him. Always, little star. Always. For the first time since she was taken, Marcus felt the weight lift. But deep inside, he knew the fight wasn't finished. The leader had escaped, and the words about a pickup still haunted him. This was bigger than 3 men in a barn. But for now, in that moment, father and daughter were together again. And nothing mattered more. The sun was low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the quiet farmland. Marcus carried Amara carefully, her small arms clinging to his neck. Every step felt heavy, yet light at the same time, because she was safe. Her trust in him, her little hand holding his, was stronger than any weight he had ever carried. They moved quickly but cautiously. Marcus knew the leader had escaped and could be planning something else. The world felt too large, too full of danger, but for now, all that mattered was getting Amara back to safety. As they walked toward the main road, Marcus glanced around, remembering every detail: the barn, the fields, the signs of the men who had tried to take his daughter. His mind was already forming plans. The battle wasn't fully over, but that was a problem for later. Right now, it was about home. Amara whispered softly, "Daddy, will they come back?" Marcus kissed the top of her head. "No one will touch you again, I promise. Not ever. I will protect you, always." Her small hand pressed against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. In that rhythm, she found comfort. Marcus, too, felt a sense of peace, even though danger lingered in the background. This was the first moment since the nightmare began that he could breathe. By the time they reached the edge of the farmland, Marcus spotted a familiar car. He waved it down. His friend, someone he trusted completely, had been waiting to help. Together, they loaded Amara into the back seat. Marcus's eyes never left the horizon, watching for any sign of trouble. The drive back to town was quiet. Amara rested her head against Marcus's shoulder, exhausted but relieved. The fear in her eyes was slowly replaced by trust. She had been through so much, yet her spirit remained strong. Marcus admired her bravery, even as his heart ached for the tears she had held back. Back at the house, Marcus unlocked the door and stepped inside with her. The familiar walls, the small kitchen table, and the soft carpet felt like safety incarnate. Amara's eyes sparkled as she looked around, realizing she was truly home. "Your room is ready," Marcus said softly, guiding her down the hallway. She smiled faintly and ran to her bed, hugging her blanket tightly. Marcus watched her, noticing how small she looked against the large bed, and how vulnerable she had been just hours ago. His chest tightened, but the relief outweighed the pain. After making sure she was comfortable, Marcus sat beside her. He brushed her hair gently and whispered stories of bravery, not his own, but stories to make her laugh and forget the fear she had felt. She listened, slowly smiling, until her eyes grew heavy with sleep. Finally, she drifted off. Marcus stayed beside her, watching, guarding. The house was quiet, the outside world moving on, but he did not move. This night, he had kept his promise. She was safe, and he had brought her back. Once he was sure she slept soundly, Marcus walked to the living room, pulling out his notebook. He wrote down every detail of what had happened: the barn, the men, the escape route of the leader, and the lessons he had learned. He knew the world was still uncertain, that there were dangers waiting, but for now, he had succeeded. Later, he stepped outside and looked at the stars. The night was calm, peaceful, but his mind was alive with thoughts. Amara's safety was everything. Nothing could ever replace the bond they shared. He whispered into the quiet air, "I'll always be ready. Always." The police arrived the next morning to gather more details. Marcus gave them information, precise and clear, ensuring that the men who had taken Amara would be caught. But deep inside, he knew that he couldn't rely solely on them. Some battles required his own hands, his own decisions. Days passed, and life slowly returned to a sense of normalcy. Amara went back to school, smiling and laughing again, though Marcus noticed she sometimes glanced around nervously. He would kneel beside her, whispering reassurance. "Daddy's here. You're safe. Nothing will ever harm you while I'm around." At night, they returned to their bedtime routine. Stories, prayers, hugs, and whispered secrets, small moments that made life worth fighting for. Marcus held her tightly, feeling the warmth of her trust, knowing that the past few days had only strengthened their bond. The father and daughter sat together in the quiet living room one evening, looking out at the stars. Marcus held her hand, their fingers intertwined. "You are my light, Amara. No darkness in the world can touch you." She looked up at him, her eyes full of love and trust. "And you're my hero, Daddy. Always." Marcus smiled, his heart full. He had faced the shadows, he had confronted danger, and he had won not with weapons, but with love, courage, and determination. Though the world outside might still hold threats, Marcus knew one truth above all: as long as he had his daughter, he had a purpose stronger than fear. Together, they could face anything. And in that small house, filled with warmth and laughter once more, the storm had passed. Father and daughter, bound by love and unbroken courage, were finally home again. The future awaited, uncertain yet hopeful, and Marcus was ready. Ready to face whatever came next, as protector, as father, and as a man who would never let harm touch his child. For now, peace was theirs. And the bond between them was stronger than ever.